And I am surely live as the magic machine tells me that I am so. And we can always trust the magic machine. So, first things first, I am not a public educator. I'm not, this is a technique that I use, and I'm basing this on, crap that I heard on the internet. Okay. So I'll share it with you. You may find it useful, you may not. You may have various educated reasons to know, well, that's a terrible thing to do, and don't do it like that. I'll tell you where we say hello to Genocide first in the live chat. Gold medal onto thee for live chat participation. Onto Genocide. We say hello to Genocide. I'll tell you where I got this technique. It's a very simple, easy technique. I'll tell you about it. I'll tell you where I learned about it from. I'll tell you what I remember about the people that recommended it and why. It's a basic technique. You may very well have heard it before and saw it in a different context. Shadow Zone Production, Sammy Baby. Silver medal onto you for live chat participation. Hey, and how you doing? On to you. How you doing, baby? Um, and we'll try to put it into a little bit of use. I got RPG books here. Confession time. Sam says, listening to this while I warm up a lemon pepper chicken. I would tell you what that's code for, but I don't only want to get not banned from YouTube. I don't want to get damned from God's green creation. I wish I didn't know what that was code for. My innocence was lost long ago. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm 24 years old. Genocide used to be president of MIT. Folks, there are consequences for our actions, but perchance I can redeem myself by giving a little bit back to society. We say hello to David Bucky, bronze medal for live chat participation. How to absorb new RPG books and materials super fast. Okay, look, RPG books are not novels. They're not, even just, histories. Um, they go back and forth between, depending on whether they're a core rule book, whether they're a player's guide or a dungeon master's guide, whether they're an adventure book, whether they're a monster manual or bestiary. Bestiary. Um, it can be read like a algebra textbook or an encyclopedia, or simply like an atlas for a mystical magical land that only exists in the imagination of no one. Anyway, so you you're excited about a book, you're excited about several books, and but where's the time to read? And you can't tear through them, you can't just rip through them like, a Joan Collins novel. So, a reference that everyone in this audience will get. We say a little Prag Magic. The medals having been given out, we give you a hearty and heartfelt acknowledgement and praise and hosannas. Prag Magic for live chat participation. Keats, we love you. How to absorb these materials fast. If you have a book, an RPG book, and you want to get through it, oftentimes it'll tell you we don't expect you to get through this whole book from cover to cover. And it'll say you don't need to in order to enjoy this game or get started with this game. Um, so you may have, depending on whether you're just a player or going to be a game master or dungeon master, depending on the lingo of the table and of the game, you may have instructions as to where to concentrate and what areas of a book to read or absorb. But you may be without direction, and you may just say, I want to read this book, but I don't have need of every single piece of information, every piece of nitty gritty. So how do I maximize my enjoyment of the book, but at the same time get what I can out of it, get the most overview of it, but don't get bogged down in the things that's going to turn this thing into a slog and make it that instead of reading, the 3 or 4 books that I found at the con, relatively cheap over the summer, I just end up trying to get through 1/3 of one book because, when you're reading +2 on dice tables and, endless, ramifications of various if then but scenarios, you can get bogged down and it can turn into like studying for an algebra assignment, which is not conducive to a good time, not conducive to fun, and not conducive to bringing you back to the book to get your nose back into that book and reading again. It's more conducive to getting you to probably choose to do something else with your time, like listen to a podcast, listen to an audiobook, or watch something on YouTube like this shmoo carrying on. Okay? So this technique that I'm going to share with you, it's very simple. And I'm going to tell it to you, and I'm going to tell you more of the details about it and kind of where I got it. You just read the first sentence of each paragraph after having read the table of contents. That's it in a nutshell. But let me tell you where I heard it from and what the point is. Now, where I got this from, and I heard this technique multiple times, okay? And I'm giving it to you, and I'm giving it to you as a technique to get a broad brush of an RPG book so that you can move on to the next one. The technique is actually not really for that. The technique is really the first step of a study methodology for the rooting of information in your brain. Basically it's setting up of an outline of a context, a framework for the information that you're the deep information that you're going to absorb on the first full read through. You prepare for by doing a first brush through, by first reading the table of contents that basically sets up an outline of the information, an initial outline of the information and concepts in your head. You're introduced to the raw terms and terminology in a certain order, though that order makes no particular sense to you, and the terminology may seem completely alien. Then when you go through, after having read the table of contents, you're reading the book, and then you're reading the first sentence of every paragraph. Why? Basically, the standard way that English is structured, an author is going to naturally put their main topic sentence, the main point of any paragraph is going to go first. And then the rest of the paragraph is going to follow from that, generally giving you more descriptions, more detailed, and more information about that and unpacking that first core main point sentence. So when you first have read the table of contents, you're introduced to the core concepts, though they may be alien to you, the terminology, though it may be alien to you, and a kind of a general initial outline of how these kind of concepts are introduced. Harder concepts that build upon, early concepts will be introduced first, and then concepts that build upon those will follow. If the author is any good. I mean, if you get a crap book that's written by, Joe Dirt, you're fucked. I mean, if you know what I mean, if you get the rantings of ravings of a lunatic, or a book that's been written, with the William S. Burroughs cutout method, this is, well, I mean, it'll be what it is. You'll absorb things generally after a fashion. What that does to help root the information in your brain, well, I don't know. Let's not go down that particular rabbit hole. Let's just stick to this. You read the initial table of contents that introduces things and puts a general outline of things you hadn't introduced and kind of gives you a structure, though you might not understand it. Then you read through and read those initial first sentences of every paragraph. That's going to be a longer process than just reading the table of contents, obviously. But it's going to be a lot faster than reading the entire book. This initial book that I picked off here, these are all books that, look, folks, I was supposed to not buy any more RPG books. On April 20th, though I was good and didn't kill anyone on Hitler's birthday, inside jokes, I did relapse. I'm not like a shopaholic. I am an alcoholic and an addict, but I use, the reference to shopping addiction is more calm. It's more jokey. Let's not say joke about that. Anyway, once you cross the line, you've crossed the line. So, yada, 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 Noble Knight Games, things on clearance on ridiculous sale prices. On 420, I went overboard because I was being a good boy and abstaining from the Jamaican observation of Adolf Hitler's holiday. And maybe I was feeling, April's a hard month for me, whatever. Yada. Basically, everything I didn't buy on my initial run through of the clearance sale at Noble Knights, I went back and did on a second run through. But now I'm going to stop again. But anyway, you have new books. That's my confession. Anyway, I didn't drink. I didn't use. I bought books. And I'm teaching people how to absorb the material. Okay. So it's research material. You know what I mean? It's educational value. Okay. I'm giving back to society. Anyway, Savage Worlds Rifts, the Tomorrow Legion's Player's Guide. How many pages? We got 2 through, with the last page of text, really not counting the index, 143. Okay? If you were going to read this, and the reason I also have these books as a variety of books from a variety of different systems, different types of books, is we're going to try and basically see if how this technique works in some different contexts. And I've already given you the technique. It's very, very easy. You are an at-home player, and look, if you are going to be at a new table and you've been invited to play Fate, or you've been invited to play 3.5, and they tell you, we need you to do this, this, and this, read this, this, and this part of the player's handbook before the first session. You know what your assignment is. If you are going to run the game yourself, you pretty much have to read, a lot of the materials, before you do things. It's just kind of the way it is. But let's say you're like me and you're not, there's nothing scheduled. There's nothing that's going to be bringing you to a table to actually play Savage World Rifts or play, Providence from 2000. Hold on. From 1997. 25 years old, based on, I guess, based on a comic book, 26 years old. So it's not like I'm thinking there's going to be a ton of people that are going to be playing Providence, but I want to give Providence its time. I don't want to just have purchased Providence. I want to experience something of Providence. But there's a lot of books that I want to experience. So I want to make a deal with Providence. I want to say, I want to bear witness to you. I want to bear witness to the artists that worked on you and put their work in you. I want to bear witness to the time that you testified to. Holy crap, 1997 was a trip of a time. The drum and bass music, the raving, the weird time, that cross section of time in my life between goth and rave. Woo, weird times, strange times. The weird times when I thought like taking a certain amount of drugs, me and my friends taking a certain amount of drugs at a certain period of time. We thought that, don't worry, we don't need to worry about getting jobs because sometime between 2000 and 2012, we're all going to turn into beings of pure energy and light anyway. Just kick this, pond scum anyway. So what? Who cares? Right? The crowd goes wild. So we want to make a deal and say, I want to experience you, but I don't have the time to read every letter, every jot, every tittle. I don't have time to read every line of lore. And I certainly, maybe we don't need to spend our time because there's no table of calling and there's no indication that there might be any table of calling to play Providence anytime in my life ever. Maybe there's no real need for us to get bogged down in the nitty gritty of the rules and the hard mechanics of the pluses and minuses of character creation and, the ultimate, final resolution of mechanics on certain degrees. So that's where this technique comes in, where we say to a book like Providence, we're going to get through you, but we're going to do this thing of just reading the first sentence of every paragraph. And at first that might sound nuts, but if you see me do it in execution, you'll see there's going to be periods where things go by and you'll see, well, yeah, we're kind of not making sense. But you'll see that there's whole sections where even when we get down into rules where we understand what's going on, we know we're not getting every detail, but we clearly are going to be able to follow the gist if we're reading, a competent author. So let's just dive right in. Here's Providence from 1997. It's a beautiful book. I mean, if I had the document cam out for this one, and I'll probably bring the document cam out for this one at a later point, because this book from 1997 is absolutely, I looked at the art before, gorgeous. If we start with the table of contents, it goes from pages 6 to 212. There's an author's introduction, an introduction, a history of Providence, a geography of Providence, the factions, the populace, character roles, the weird ways, monsters, stats and stuffs, and then finally an index. So already by just reading the table of contents, we already have a sense and an understanding of the values and the importance that this particular game places on different factors. Different games place different values on essentially the same kind of core ingredients. It's like between chocolate chip cookie recipes and styles, you're going to see it's good. How much chocolate, what kind of chips, how big the chips or chunks, this sort of thing. How much brown sugar, how much of this, how much, you know what I mean? And with this, we see that there's a lot of time spent on the lore, the kind of the narrative, who the people are, what the place is. And it's not until the very end, in a relatively truncated period of space that we get kind of stats and stuff and monsters, meaning so kind of it seems like the mechanics of the game might not be the most important thing. Here's the author's introduction. When I just read, the author is Lucien Solban, 1997. You can't make this stuff up. So just reading the author's introduction and just reading the first sentence of every paragraph. Hi there. I approached this problem from the point of view of what was lacking out there. With that in mind, I stepped into the sparsely populated void. I will admit that initially Providence was an attempt to create a new genre for a superhero game, but it quickly evolved into something more. I promise not to be pretentious about this. Our lives are filled with enough negative messages. When did gaming stop becoming escapism and start becoming an affirmation of our worst qualities? My friends call me an optimist, a sick, twisted, and perverted optimist, but an optimist nonetheless. Lucien Solban. So you see, we get just the first sentence. We don't get the conclusion, but we see and understand exactly what's happening. Started off to be superheroes, and it went somewhere else. Here's our introduction. Again, just the first sentence of each paragraph. They tell us when we are young that we walk the difficult paths so that we might become stronger. They lie. We are a putrid people, afraid to face the darkness. Do not misunderstand me. I lost my wing because they had found me out, the graceless worms with sweetened tongues who called themselves my friends. Because of their discovery, they sent their wilders to my door. Their trial did not deserve the name. My place of captivity, an obulette not worthy of the most murderous wayfarer. They imagined that they were safe now, safe from my wrath. That was it. There you go. The introduction, the preface, the hero's word. Never forget, this fact is what the world of Providence forces us to remember. What you're about to read within the pages of this book is the cumulative effort of a group of people who shared the same dream and never forgot. Proper greetings. These are, again, I'm just reading the first sentence of each paragraph. And again, fair use, fair use, fair use. We're reading this to share Providence, share aspects of Providence, but also just to share this technique of absorbing. So I've already gone through, in just a moment, I've gone through 11 pages. These are the days of reckoning. As I heard my mother speak, her once rich hair now spider frail wisps of white that crowned her brow, her voice echoed the words she had heard on the deathbed of her father. And so it passed from the old to the young to carry the burden of knowledge of the world we were exiled from and the world we were exiled to. I never dreamed I would be the one to carry the responsibility of those words. Introduction by Lady Corinne Lassabelle, Minor Lassabelle, Trupal Dragon. Manor Lassabelle, oh, Manor, not Minor, Manor Lassabelle, Trupal Dragon. How else could you introduce the world except through the eyes of those who have lost blood upon her soil and profited from the grace of her branches? This is not the beginning of a story, but the middle of an epic adventure. Visitor's primer to Providence. Providence is a unique setting, filled with familiar concepts and ideals, but suffused with new sights, dangers, and adventure. Before delving into the intricacies of history, geography, and society, which are presented in the next chapters, it is necessary to visualize the world in which the play is cast. Basic background. History does not begin with Providence, but with a war called Yaswal. The caste system eventually served as the catalyst for a war between the forces of the status quo and reform. The progenitors of the rebellion of ideals were exiled via a series of magical gates into a world that was meant to crush their spirit. The attempt to destroy them not only failed, but as a result, the loser's resolve was strengthened, as was their desire to try again to claim victory. At this point, events are reaching a critical stage setting. It must be stated over and over again, lest the magnitude of the image is forgotten. Once serving as penal colonies for the thousands of exiles imprisoned here, the various city-states that lay scattered across the valley floor have become immense communities, growing beyond the confines of their shameful past. The floor of the jungle is cracked open, inundating the land with an ever-increasing deluge of water. It's fantastic. They've got some live action art and some illustrations here. Society. And again, I see there's some things that are moving around, but some things that are not quite making sense because I'm, just reading the first sentence of each paragraph. But we've moved forward 3 whole pages. Before the exile, all people were winged and capable of dancing amongst the clouds. Power is further confined by the use of weird, the mystical force of magic, and who is taught to use it. One unique strata within Providence's politics is filled with shards, people born with natural abilities and powers. Initially, their appearance nearly threw the caste system into disarray. Individuals. Each individual, by appearance alone, belongs to an extended family of sorts called a Troupal, Troupal. Although the Troupals may have initially been the manner in which to define races from different regions, it became more than just that. Current status of the world. A few of the gates leading back to the old world had been discovered in the past. In the meanwhile, an ocean continues to inundate the jungle floor without the hint of mercy. Geological upheaval has created a volcano within one of the spires that connect opposite sides of the world. The caste system is threatening to burst at the seams under the threat of violent revolt, and several of the city-states are at war. Role-playing in Providence. So you wish to learn more about my world, and perhaps through it gain an understanding of my people, and through us yourself. Theme. It's all about being a hero. Secondary, but no less paramount, is the notion that struggle is necessary. Finally, a tertiary but extremely important theme is one of remembrance. Mood. This is the domain of the game master. Just because the game is 4-color does not mean it is limited to 4 colors. The job of the game master mistress. It has been said that even a solitary candle is enough to light the darkness. The GM must remind players of this optimism as they play. Death in the world. If the heroes are meant to have significant impact upon the direction of their world, then how does the GM handle the premature death of a character? Blaze of glory. The death of the character may serve as the inspiration that drives others to great things. Not until I say so. An option available only if the GM and the players are comfortable with it is that nobody dies unless the player wants their character to perish. With this option, the GM should be aware of the fact that game immortality does not mean the characters can't be captured, physically incapacitated, maimed, tortured, etc. in memory. More than one classical work of fiction, theater, or film has been based on this concept. Making the hero. If death is a difficult thing to deal with, see, sometimes it doesn't make sense exactly, but you just keep going because you're trying to get through. Making the hero. If death is a difficult thing to deal with, how much more so is the making the players into heroes? Political games. Providence is a world of station, caste, and social hierarchy. The caste. The need to protect the purity of the bloodlines is a fallacy because the birth of the fallen is a process of natural evolution. The players, on the other hand, know the truth, or at least they believe that everyone has the right to equal representation. The guilds. Having been created to place powered individuals within the constraints of the caste system, the guilds can successfully challenge the ruling nobility of most city-states due to their financial and political backing. Players who are members of the guilds must try to open the eyes of their guild masters to the dangers around them. The job of heroes. Outside the political arena, there are plenty of places to play the hero. The world of Providence has become a complicated place. People's Knights. People's Knights is a designation for any individual willing to risk life and limb in order to help others. While People's Nights always existed, it is only recently that they have been gaining the increased support of the mundane population. Explorers. The world is still an enigma wrapped in a casing of poisoned thorns. Two of the most immediate problems facing the populace of Providence are the floods and the threat of war with the races of people known collectively as the Lost Tribes. The world is currently flooding through a land breach called the Sunderlands. When the exiles first arrived in Providence, they did so via a series of spatial gates. We're already on page 17. We've been here like there's a little while. I'm not gonna read the whole book, but I'm just saying, like, you know what I mean? Like, we've already, like, I'm trying to think where it ends. Or is that oh, we'll go to page 22. Then we'll go to weapons. Then we'll just do, we'll do 22. The explorers of Providence come in many forms, from the mysterious horizon striders to the guild of messengers, the alliances. Apart from the tribes of fallen who live within the deep and independent city-states, the two primary camps are the Wardens and the Alliance of Kings. Rather than bringing these two camps together, the players must be ever vigilant for the machinations of the Wardens. Ooh, and Baberama over here, it's like Barbarella. 1997, folks. I got to tell you, ahead of that, back in the day when I was young, I'm not a kid anymore, but some days I sit and wish I was a kid again. Oh man, I'm telling you. Where am I? Oh, the second alliance of enemies that the heroes must be vigilant against are the Lost Tribes. This culminated in the Lost War, where the Green People and White Crow attacked the Alliance of Kings and the Wardens. In recent times, hostilities on the part of the White Crow, Green People, and half the Serpent King have increased, threatening to instigate a second Lost War. And we're already up to the survival guide. We'll take a drink of water. See, here's Bree. You're helping me out here. Thank you. So I know this amateur hour. So I've heard this technique a million times in learning techniques, and so you got it better than me. You're wording it better than me. It's a good tool for systematic thinking and methodology. The leading sentence, thank you, has actually right terminology. The leading sentence often gives away the rest of the content. Exactly. There you go. Thank you, Bree. The tools of the world. Oh no, here's survival. Okay, here we go. Survival guide. The following section deals with the aspects of the world which are often taken for granted. So this might be interesting because this might be a little bit of different type of information. We'll see how the technique helps us. We've been able to absorb we were able to absorb 18 pages of material. You know that if we were reading that material out, or if I was just reading that material, every sentence of every paragraph, I wouldn't have been able to go through that fast. But going through that fast, though I didn't have every detail, there was only one or two times where I felt like we lost probably a big chunk of the plot point. And for the most part, even though basically you're making the author's outline in reverse, right? The author makes their outline, and then they take their outline, they take the topic sentence, and then they write it out. We're doing it. We're just basically reverse engineering it just so we can get the outline out, and so that we can basically have absorbed the material, the nuts and bolts, the underlying skeleton of the material, knowing that we're leaving a whole bunch of it behind, but knowing that we got, for the most part, as much as we can. Maximizing, the cost benefit analysis of, look, there's only so much time in the day. We only have so much time, and knowing the fact that we're probably not going to find enough people that ever play a game of Providence. Hey, how much time we're going to spend on it? The tools of the world. Despite the fact that Yaswalian society had been in existence for several millennia prior to the Grand Rebellion, it is not as advanced as people would expect. One of the prime examples of this is metallurgy. While weird, that's the magic, can be used to alter almost any medium in order to fashion objects and strengthen them, certain elements have innate drawbacks or limitations that dictate the maximum degree of manipulation. Wood and stone. These two items are the most common elements used to fashion mundane weapons and tools. Wood's primary drawback is that despite weird, it is still not a durable medium. Stone, on the other hand, seems to store weird with less detriment to its form. One of the most unusual types of throwing weapons is made from wide palm leaves cut into triangular wedges with serrated edges. That sounds cool. Tree resin. Certain trees within Providence, especially the jacabo tree, secrete a milky white to amber colored resin. One technique to make an item or weapon heavier is to fill the mold with stones while the resin is still in liquid state. The major assets of resin are that it seems to hold an enchantment nearly indefinitely and that it remains easy to manipulate because it is light. Crystals. Crystals are perhaps the most valued medium for weapons and even armor. Also known as harbinger stones and God's tears. Oh, that's nice. Crystal seeds were originally smuggled over from Yaswale by the Dachau monks and cared for until the time was right to reveal them. The Dachau monks have kept their secrets well, for only they know how to grow and enchant the crystals. The seeds eventually break the surface of the ground in the form of crystal rods that measure from 2 inches to 3 feet in length. Basic spells. One of the first enchantments laid upon a new crystal alters it into a specific shape. Intermediate spells. In natural form, harbinger stones are fragile, and therefore useless outside works of art or jewelry. Advanced spells. This degree of enchantment is one often found in the possession of combat flyers from Tropal Hawk, Dove, and Eagle. The first form is normally used for convenience when traveling. The shape of either object must be somewhat related to the other, although more expensive enchantments can be used to make either smaller by half. Artifact spells. This level of enchantment is exceedingly expensive and scarce, but powerful nonetheless. Almost no one aside from a rare king or queen possesses an artifact crystal artifact crystal. Monarch Scepter. The most famous artifact crystal, known as the Monarch Scepter, is currently in possession of Regent Kaialis, the head of the Alliance of Kings. The Monarch Scepter is powerful because it is a symbol of office and freedom, but what makes it even more potent are the weird spells inside it. Heal self 3 times a day, 16 points. Heal others 2 times a day, 16 points. Air Elemental as level 2 spell. Analyze Weird, Sleep, Bolt of Flame, Earth Armor, level 3 protection, Magic Resistance, level 4 protection, Lightning Bolt, level 4. And the last page we'll read, page 22, because 22 is my magic number. We got through 22 pages of material like that. Did we get it all? No, but we saw a huge chunk of information from just this one book. And I can tell you, because it was about the 8-minute mark that I started reading, that in 30 minutes, we got through 22 pages of material. That's pretty good. So you'd see that if you have a book like the 3.5 Player's Handbook, right? And you're not headed to a table, but you want a real sense of the game. You want a real sense of the game. You're not going to want to read every spell description line from line because you're not going to use every spell. You might not even be the type of person that plays a spellcaster. So why are you going to read every spell? It's going to be a waste of your time. And you could get hit by the proverbial bus tomorrow, but that's not necessarily the way we need to look at it. There's a better way to do it. And you could skip the whole spell section because you might not need spells at all. You might not use spells at all. But why skip the whole spell section? Just using this technique means you're going to get a little bit from literally every paragraph of the book. You're still going to move through the entire book. You're still going to touch upon literally every paragraph of the book. But you're not going to get everything for sure. You're not going to get a whole heck of a lot, but you're going to skim the entire surface of the entire thing. So there are going to be chinks in the armor, but your armor is going to be chainmail, right? That's the point of chainmail. You're covering the spread. Yeah, things can get through. An arrow can get through that, you know what I mean? But you know what I mean? But the theory behind the chainmail is why people still use, under certain conditions, chainmail. It makes sense. Mesh, chain link fence. You know what I mean? We're not going to cover every square inch. That would be a waste of time. And it's going to screw up the environment to say nothing, right? I said, bah, bah, bah. Right? You know what I mean? Let the birds and bugs come through. We're not that jacked up about the squirrels, but we want to keep the cows and the criminals and the vagrants and, the citizens out. You know what I mean? The bad guys. See what I did there? Rye statements on society. Weapons of Providence. Providence has its share of common weapons, including swords, knives, daggers, hammers, spears, javelins, arrows, light lances, darts, nets, clubs, maces, flails, whips, bolos, and polearms. Huck's claws. There are a variety of claw-style weapons that aerial combatants enjoy using. Shred guards. A rather nasty item used during fights in the air. Shred guards are arm and shin pads studded with sharp rock, broken glass, or even crystal shards. Hawk Knights are known to use crystal shard guards, while dragons have a tail variant of them. Throw globes. The distance weapon of choice for some flyers is a simple item called a throw globe. When flying above an opponent, combatants prefer to throw their globes, allowing gravity to work for rather than against them. Ram bucklers, an item normally worn by hawk aerialists. Rear nets. Rear nets are a defensive item used by flyers from Trupal Raven, Bat, and Dove against other pursuers during a dive. The same maneuver can also be used when two combatants fly by one another, but this is rather difficult to accomplish since gravity drags the net down almost immediately. Timing in this situation is critical. Another illustration. There seems to be a lot of girls in this world. Metals. Metals are not popular for several reasons. This is why metallic items, weapons, and armor are so rare. Apart from rare artifacts which survive from Yaswale, some noblemen are known to contract weird practitioners to create special items for them. Recently, the fallen have rediscovered techniques for mining and processing small quantities of metal. Money. Oh no, I went out to page 23. Money in Providence, the only standard of currency used is the sovereign task, which comes in a variety of shapes. Until recently, the Alliance relied on using simple metal tasks because the process to mine and purify the ore proved to be beyond the task of most people. Go on. Try to think. So there you go. So that's so there you go. Genocide, I prefer scale armor. Deluge, another overused word in Mike's account. Hey, look, it's coming back in style. It's all the 20-year nostalgia loop. Wilders and Wayfarers, speaker my language. Pride Magic. If you look on Twitter, Gene Wilder is trending. Make of that what you will. Make of that what you will. So we saw that. So you see the technique at work. We saw the technique at work in one book, Providence. If we look at Savage Worlds, the Tomorrow Legion Player's Guide for Riffs, we look at their table of contents. We would use the technique, this table of contents, page 2 through 1. Oh, we've looked at this already. The contents are introduction, making riffs savage, it's riffs, boom guns and super psionics, matters of mega damage and MDC, introducing other savage characters, chapter 1 characters, iconic frameworks, Lords of War, Mars Fortune and Glory Table, psychic powerhouses, Masters of Magic, Flame Wind, Dragon Hatchling, DBs and mutants. And there you go. So let me try to think. We got setting rules. Okay, The Hero's Journey, Chapter 6, Chapter 5, Rare Earth. Oh, here's Kevin Simbita, creator of Riffs. Let's read his Stepping into the Megaverse. Let's just read his little foreword, just the first sentence of every paragraph. See if it makes any sense. See if the technique holds up. When I first conceived Riffs, I wanted to create a fully realized universe that was unique, expansive, and would blow people's minds. Riffs is Earth almost 300 plus years after the Great Cataclysm, the return of magic, and the coming of the Rifts. For me, the Rifts were the key. I often joke that I suffer from an overactive imagination. As a game designer, sometimes you know exactly what you want and you hammer it out. I spent 3.5 years creating Rifts. It took a long time and a lot of hard work, but we did it. With Rift Savage Worlds, the Rift Earth setting and characters are being reinterpreted and brought to life for an entirely different set of rules. There it is. You get the gist. You get the gist. I'm trying to think what would be the best one for us to read in this way. That would make sense. Maybe the introduction, because I'm trying to think if one that would make gear. 108, because 108 is the number of God in Hinduism. That's why there was a Krishna core band called 108. And you say on the japa beads, there's 108 beads before you do another round. So we'll go to that page. And we'll do our techniques. Psionics and Magic. Chapter 3. 23 Skidoo. 8 plus 1 is 9, which is 3 times 3. Okay, here we go. In a world of railguns and giant robot armor, it might seem mere mental powers and arcane spells aren't enough to stand up to such military might. Thanks to and again, I'm just reading the first paragraph of every the first sentence of every paragraph. That's what I'm doing. Thanks to enormous amounts of eldritch and psychic energy flowing into and across the world from rifts and through ley lines, anyone capable of tapping into their inner powers or channeling magic has access to incredible might and flexible capabilities. There are some basic rules, benign and problematic, that apply to anyone using magical powers or psionic abilities. Blast and burst always do mega damage. They count as heavy weapons per Savage Worlds, but the normal use of bolt, damage field, and smite do not. The armor and barrier powers are not MDC, but the mega power versions of these powers, greater armor and stalwart walls, are. Every point of strain a caster or psionic has in cyberware imposes a -1 to casting rolls. The penalties imposed by the strength minimums of body armor also apply to any arcane skill roll except for arcane background. Weird science. Core arcane backgrounds. All the arcane backgrounds in Savage Worlds are available with just about any tradition, style, or form of magic imaginable for heroes to practice. When putting together a particular style of magic or faith, the game master and players should work out which powers make the most sense for the form or tradition, as well as what trappings best fit. Note, those with the arcane background magic or miracles edge may eventually gain the Master of Magic edge to gain mega powers for their known spells. New powers: Clairvoyance, rank, seasoned, power points 3+, range, varies, duration 3. 1 round. Clairvoyance allows the caster to sense people, places, and things outside of normal perception. When using clairvoyance, the caster chooses a single sense, usually sight, to project. Illusion, rank, novice, power points 3, range, smarts, duration 3. Illusion makes a single target see something that isn't there, or else see things differently than they actually are. Illusory attacks can't actually wound a target, but can cause the perception of damage. Passive illusions, like a wall, take little effort to maintain. Telepathy, rank, novice, PowerPoints, 2. Range, 1 mile. Duration, 3. 1 per round. Telepathy is used to communicate mentally with other people. If the caster cannot see the target, they must know and be able to identify the intended recipient in some reasonable fashion. Their roll suffers a -4 penalty. Each conversation established via telepathy counts as a separate power for purposes of maintenance penalties. And then there's a breakout box. Casting more than one spell per round. Characters with an arcane background consider each power a separate action for activation, even if it uses the same skill. Example: Renard could roll spellcasting twice at -2 to try to activate boost, lower trait for fighting, and smite on his sword. That's it, because we're only reading the first sentence. Mega power. So even though we're kind of like, we know that there's more information that we need for context, we're moving on. Mega powers. Mega powers take magic and psionics to grand and powerful levels suitable for Savage Rifts. Mega powers are high-powered expansions of existing Savage Worlds powers. Remember then, Savage Rifts power points are either PPE or ISP, depending on the character's arcane background. And that goes on. So you see, that's the technique. So we've been here for like almost an hour, so I don't think it's necessary for me to keep on reading. I think it probably makes more sense for either to show you one of the books I have here. Some of this is material that we've already seen or stuff that we've seen. Here I have some books for the cipher system. Here are this is a book for Numenera that I talked about recently. This book is from 2016, but what are you going to do? It looks really good. It's in the ocean. So this is the Cipher System by Monty Cook, and this is a game called The Strange by his underling, his consigliere, Broussard Cardell, who he wasn't. So Monty Cook Games is on the Nostalgia Loop itself, because Numenera was the first project for Monty Cook Games. Okay, so Monty Cook, who was the guy who was one of the main players behind Dungeons and Dragons 3rd edition, right, where he really kind of broke into his own. He was an established guy with a reputation already, working at TSR. But in 2000, it seems like is where he really kind of established, like he's really started getting his big breaks when he was one of the guys that did 3.0. In 2003, when 3.5, I think he was already kind of moving on and doing other things. We know that when Pathfinder did Pathfinder 1, which is really just Dungeons and Dragons 3.5. They can call it 3.75. If you take Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 and just have some house rules, it's Dungeons and Dragons 3.5. I'm sorry. It is what it is. So Monty Cook did the forward for that. So he was already the guy to tap and have recognition to say, I you know what I mean? Etse, Dumine, Abde, it's a good game, right? And so then that already sets him up on 2010 to come out with Numenera is one of the most successful RPG, I think, crowdfundings of all time, I guess. And that's what establishes the Cipher System. So the first game for the Cipher System, though it wasn't called the Cipher System at the time, was Numenera. The second game was Broussard Cardell's baby with Monty Cook, The Strange, which is kind of like basically the fringe kind of like, it's kind of hard to explain. It's really, really awesome, but it really, we'll get into it more next year because it's 2014. But we have the player's guide. I've shown you the player's guide for Numenera. This is the player's guide for The Strange. We have Numenera Into the Deep, which is Numenera Under the Sea, which is the secrets of the strange queen of all octopuses. Her temple palace of coral and the unique technology of her kind, along with dozens of other wondrous locations and items. So we got that. 2 new playable races, the Skeen and the Nyadapt for aquatic campaigns. All right. New creatures, including the deadly Viscid Watcher, the enigmatic Frozen Omath, the Titanic Courand, and the squid-like Felcor. All right. Dozens of new ciphers and artifacts, exotic and fascinating environments to fill your players with wonder and take your adventures to unique and breathtaking realms. We also have Mega Traveler Player's Manual from 1987. I was 12 years old when this book came out. And this is an actual book. Unlike when you buy, I can't recommend, I can't recommend buying used role-playing game books on Amazon anymore because there's too many scoundrels who will do this unscrupulous practice of what they do is they get print on demand. They order print on demand books from Lulu or Drive Through RPG, and then they place a false listing on Amazon for a used copy of an older book, and then people order it, and then they just bank on the fact that the person will either not know to look and see that it's a print on demand and not an actual original book, or that the person when they get the item is just going to be like, well, I'm not going to bother to go through and do it, and do the complaint and then send it back. So it's a nightmare. It's insane. But if you order from Noble Knight Games and it says it's a used book from 1987, you can trust it's an actual book from 1987. It's a used book from 1987. Introduction, basic definition, task, character, traveler character types, common character tables, character generation example, tables for Navy, Marines, Army, Scouts, Flyers, Sailors, table for law enforcers, doctors, diplomats, bureaucrats, scientists, nobles, tables for merchants, belters, pirates, rogues, hunters, barbarians, character formats, skills, skill list, character improvement, advanced character generation, common advanced character tables, mercenary character tables, Navy character tables, scout character tables, merchant prince characters, merchant character tables, advanced character generation checklists, mega traveler combat, direct fire, difficulty profiles, combat charts, assessing damage, personal slug throwers, crew served slug throwers, personal energy weapons, hand-thrown grenades, grenade launchers, rifle grenades, recoilless rifles, heavy energy weapons, starship weapons, archaic weapons, special rules, psionics, TAS, Form 2, personal history, and data. Traveler, I don't have a lot of experience with, but I understand that Traveler is the game that was the whole thing, like you saw, we saw when we read Providence, I said, even just reading the table of contents, we can tell where it puts its emphasis, right? We could tell where it goes. When I was reading characters, you could tell how much energy it puts on characters. The character generation on this book goes for the first 64 pages. My understanding of the first edition of Traveler, I don't know if this edition of Mega Traveler sticks to it, was like apparently like the big deal about it was like that the character generation. Yeah, here you go. Genocide Pathfinders 3.5. Agreed. 100%. 100%. Traveler was like the character generation was so complex and was so like you could like it was a game in and of itself. Apparently it was like, so the character generation was so crunchy that, and it was like the mechanics of it were so intricate that apparently your character could die in character creation. Like you could be generating a character and you could be like super psyched, but at a certain point in character creation, you could like push things too far and kill the character. Like it's like saying like I forget how it worked. It's something to do with like you could go like it could get like the character could like overage or something through the process or something. It was nuts. But there's that. Now check this out. Time becomes a loop because when I was reading the thing for out loud for Providence, I thought to myself, and I thought this before, how many times have I thought to myself, if I didn't say this is the role-playing game channel, and I just instead went on to or started a new channel and didn't tell people that I was a conspiracy theory skeptic, but rather just took an RPG game like this. Like, this is what I mean about time becoming a loop. So the 20-year nostalgia loop and the 25-year and 30-year nostalgia loop, 25 years, this is from 1998. Think about 1998. We had Providence from 1997, right? That's the 25-year loop, right? And that shit, and we think about conspiracy theory culture, we can bring ourselves right back to pre-millennium tension and Millennium with Lance Henriksen, right? You didn't get enough X-Files. Well, we're running another hour of it with me and Lance Henriksen. What's going on? Millennium! You want me to see Kiss? Okay, let's hang out with Kiss. I'm going to scream at somebody. My daughter! My Lance Henriksen is almost as bad as my Mickey Rourke.
You have one new message. Wednesday, 5:43 p.m.
Hey there, it's me and Nick. I was down at the gym and I was just boxing with Jimmy. And I thought about you and I said, hey, I've been digging this hole in the ground for 4 or 5 years now. And my name's Mickey Rourke, by the way. This is Mickey Rourke. And I just want to say hello.
Mickey Rourke.
This is how he talks.
So kiss my ass. You can have 8,000 subscribers. You can talk about Corey Good falling apart. Does Mickey Rourke call you?
Mickey Rourke, and I grew up in the Bronx.
Sounds
I know
legit.
New Jersey. I know Hoboken is where you stay if you're smart and you're a kid. So you better listen up.
Message deleted. End of messages.
He'll call back. Mickey Rourke. Listen, you go back to 1997, 1998, it's the heyday of X-Files and all that jazz. The stuff that they were acknowledging as fiction, people are coming back and they're regurgitating today in conspiracy theory land. When I was starting in 2015, 2016, when somebody else was nowhere to be seen, they were talking about the black goo. Can you tell us about the artificial intelligent black goo? And people were telling the stories right out of the X-Files where they had the artificial intelligent black goo. And one thing leads into another because we know that those guys that wrote those episodes of the X-Files, they used to go to UFO conferences because they were interested in UFOs. The fans are the writers, are the fans, are the kids reading the comic books that end up writing the comic books, that end up writing the screenplays, that end up going back to the conferences. And unfortunately, the people that don't end up making it in Hollywood or can't keep their eye on the ball and get it together to write a book or just separate or have enough of a satisfying real life to separate fiction from fantasy, end up at those conferences or end up at those places or those forums on the internet saying that these things were really true. And I say that because here we have this thing. Conspiracy, Shadows of the Mind, the source book. It was it's from 1998, so it's on the 25-year nostalgia loop from Eden Studios. I didn't need to know that I didn't know the system that it was for. All I needed to know was that it was 25 on the 25-year nostalgia loop, and it was so on the ball for everything that we know about the 25-year nostalgia loop. This is everything that's going on in conspiracy theory land today. And where was it 25 years ago? It was in the works of fiction. It was the X-Files. They knew it was JFK blown away. What else do I have to say? They knew it was. Can you separate the fact from the fiction? It gets a little dicey, but come on. We know that this is a game we're playing. Some people don't. Is your mind your own? For over 50 years, the intelligence community searched for the perfect means to control our thoughts. Scientists tested every drug, pushed hypnosis to its limits, and developed mind-bending technologies. They succeeded beyond their expectations. They sought control and found power. Using psychics as pawns in its struggle for world domination, Aegis has created several successful programs to develop and utilize psychic powers. All of this power and control has been hidden behind masks of secrecy, masks that are now burned away to reveal the terrifying truth. Inside shadows of the mind. Now, I could just come out and say, folks, blah, blah, blah. This is it. And people will be like, that's it. You're right, 100%. Inside shadows of the mind, you will find the secrets behind the government's horrific experiments and its unsavory findings. Now, the fact of the matter is that MK Ultra was real, right? So some of this stuff is true. The Soviet connection that brought a whole new world of discoveries to Aegis. New and expanded rules for psychic powers, hypnosis, and drug use. Mind control technologies and equipment to add a twist to any campaign. Detailed descriptions of new and old psychic disciplines. New player backgrounds that will literally blow your mind. Now, here's what's crazy. Because this is on the 25-year nostalgia loop, but using the meta RPG technologies, the time travel technologies, we can incorporate this stuff and then use it. And then technically, using the meta RPG, make it real. Now, what's going to really freak you out or might freak somebody out is this. I know that Ivan Teller is specifically watching this RPG channel. Now, Ivan, I got to tell you, honey, you and Corey Good are the only people that are tracking me on the RPG channel. Okay? Honestly. As far as I can tell, the only reason that Corey Good has got a game division at all is because he's misunderstood my interest in tabletop role, my rediscovery from my youth of tabletop role-playing games as some sort of indication that, there's something happening in games. So I don't know what the hell's going on there. And we got Ivan Teller, who's literally, I gotta tell you folks, remember that whole thing when we did the solo role play and we did it was Numenera at the top over that we went to we went underneath to Warhammer 40K from 2003 and it was warlocks and goblins. I'll play you the Ivan Teller video. It's ridiculous. The guy is watching our shit. But then if he sees me do this and then start saying that we're going to take spells from this or incorporate spells from this and use this in the meta RPG, and then it's all going to become a loop, and then all of a sudden we're going traveling back in time to make it real, then what are you going to say? It's got MK Ultra right in there. So it's on the 25-year nostalgia loop. These people are incorporating the MK Ultra into a role-playing game. Conspiracy X. These guys were at Albany? Oh, yeah. Eden Studio. From Eden Studios. Fair use, fair use, fair use. Oh, look, check this out. Any similarity to characters, situations, institutions, corporations, etc., without satirical intent is strictly fictional or coincidental. It's all a big conspiracy anyway. Comments and questions can be directed via the internet at www.conspiracyx.com or via email. There you go, at AOL.com. Jeez. Or via letter with a self-addressed stamped envelope. I wonder if they're still around. Who wrote it? Justin Schmid. Let's use our technique. Table of contents. Chapter 1, identity. Introduction. Chapter summary. How to use. Acknowledgements. Chapter 2, perspective. From oracles to magnetics. Initial research. The early 20th century. Rhine and ESP. Curlian photography. Better counterespionage. Rasputin is born. Bluebird and Artichoke. Yo, Project Artichoke was real. The modern era, we know about Project Bluebird. MK Ultra, Rasputin Reborn, Parapsychology. Chapter 3, Applications, Hypnosis, Oracalicum, Psychic Powers, Basic Extrasensory Perception, Strong ESP, Psychic Disciplines, Side Trainings, Remote Viewing, New Training List, New Traits List, New Skills List, Survival Tests. Chapter 4, Disciplines, Psychic Abilities, Psychability List, Biological Psychokinesis, Side Trainings, Clairvoyance Side Trainings, Empathy Side Trainings, Precognition Side Trainings, Psychokinesis Side Trainings, Retrocognition, it's looking into the past, Retrocognition Side Training, Telepathy Side Training. Chapter 5, Behavior, Introduction, Project MK Ultra, Project Signet, Project Rasputin. And remember, there was that supercomputer Rasputin in Destiny, in the first mission in Destiny. CAPS affiliated personnel. Chapter 6, Mechanism. Introduction, Facility Resource List, Staff Resource List. Jonas said, or Corey, you're missing forgot video games, card games like Magic, but okay, I get a cut. SSP card games, you could be a card game. There you go. Time bombs, the abductee extraction team, Signet, Graybeard, remote viewer player characters, deceivers, remote viewing and grays, Rasputin, flora and fauna psi, theories and psychic energy, electronic voice phenomena, hauntings, near-death experience, reincarnation, psychic voids, psychic syncs, creating grays, timeline, chapter 8, case study, index. Holy shit. That is going to be beyond valuable. This is fucking beyond valuable. Because remember, folks, we got this from 1998 on the 25-year nostalgia loop, and we got started on this whole fucking bullshit RPG, meta RPG crap because of this nonsense. Time Ship from 1983 on the 40-year nostalgia loop. Holy motherfucking shit. And I still got to mail a copy of that out to someone. Holy motherfucking shit. I'm telling you, messed up, fucked up shit. There was a thing that I thought we should read first. Called Time Bombs. 89. We're through the looking glass. Because remember, the meta RPG, SSP, TTT, the meta RPG, the time travel technology began with don't call it a LARP, call it the discovery of an actual time travel methodology that works. Time bombs. The time bombs that MK Ultra created in the 1950s and 1960s continue to tick away in America's population, unaware of their hidden nature. Ever so often, a lunatic goes on a killing spree, often gunning down a large number of people and then committing suicide. Many of these individuals are no more lone nuts than Oswald was. They are time bombs created by MK Ultra that were somehow inadvertently set off. While the project leaders are trying to track them down to deactivate them, the documents detailing their locations and identities were destroyed when Helms and Gottlieb left the agency in 1973. As a result, many cannot be found. Aegis Prime is currently working on a theory that for some unknown reason, many are attracted to postal employment. If a character is a time bomb, the game master should either decide upon a trigger phrase that will set the character off or choose a dramatically appropriate moment for the character to turn homicidal. Game ideas could include having an enemy group such as Black Book learn of the character's nature and possibly the trigger phrase and use it against him, possibly blackmailing him. So he comes back to it and wakes you up. It's a game, folks, people. It's a game. Or is it? I must kill the queen. Wait, I can't play baseball. What am I talking about? We also have D6 locations. This is just for the D6 system that is going to come into its own in calendar year 2024. This is from 2004. The D6 system, of course, came from the Star Wars role-playing game. Well, originally came from Ghostbusters. Well, evolved from Ghostbusters. Speaking of that same energy that we got from Conspiracy Shadows of the Mind, moving on to GURPS. I am not a big fan of Steve Jackson's GURPS, but I love Steve Jackson and I love the company, and GURPS always does. He has. Remember, Steve Jackson was part of that whole 9/11 card game, because it was that card game was involved with the Illuminati card game, which brings Robert Anton Wilson involved in the mix. Though Robert Anton Wilson, I think, was pissed off at that deal because I think he got cut out of the deal somehow. I forget how it worked. But check this out. GURPS Y2K. They made sure to get this thing out the door as fast as they could. Golden coin. That's a lot of crazy. Golden coin. We should be scared, I feel. I think we should be too. First edition published October 1999. They got this right under the wire. First published October of 1999. That meant you had a whole friggin' 3 months. Way to go, Steve Jackson. You had a whole 3 months to play GURPS Y2K before this joined the ranks of every other Y2K phenomena. Holy shit. And I guess the theory was get it out, because if the world ends, the world ends. And if it doesn't, I don't know why this is not my attitude about things like this, is that you would think that something like this would be like culturally valuable, but no. But anyway, the big crash, the bug, the end of technology, the end of humanity. GURPS Y2K will be one of your all-time favorites, says Nostradamus. There are many theories about what will happen when the programming shortcuts of the 1960s come back to haunt us on January 1st, 2000. But even if those fears are never realized, the dawn of a new millennium is an uncertain time, and the thoughts of the media and the common man will turn to disaster, much of it man-made. In GURPS Y2K, 9 of your favorite GURPS authors take a long look at millennial fears, from global computer failure to global warming, from nuclear apocalypse to biblical apocalypse. You will learn about the facts, the Y2K bug and other millennial disasters, the folly, human stupidity, and disaster movie cliches, the conspiracy, the people behind it all and their secret agenda, the stage, the world as it looks on the eve of 1/1/2000, the holdout, survivalism, and how to weather a disaster, the hellraisers, opportunistic gangs, and social decay, the reconstruction, what the world will look like afterward, the speculative, high-tech fears from science fiction novels and the evening news, the superhuman, how metahumans would change the whole equation, the supernatural, creepy catastrophes from Armageddon to zombies. Are you Y2K compliant? GURPS Basic Set 3rd Edition Revised and Compendium 1 Character Creation are required to use this supplement in the GURPS campaign, but it can be used as a source book for any disaster or post-apocalyptic campaign set in recent times. Okay. And how the fuck would you also need like a character creation thing in addition to the basic set? Wouldn't the basic set also have? Jesus. Got introduction. 14 years of GURPS And that was a statement that was made in 1999. So we've now had plus 20, whatever, that many more years. It's been a long time. And everyone's playing GURPS, no, they're not. Try to think we're finding something. Here we go. Majestic 12. The Survivors. We looked up page 108 in the other book. So what's on one of Super Tech is on page 108 of this one. So let's see what's up to that. Hachimachi. How vulnerable are super equipment and gadgets to catastrophes of these proportions? I'm going to just read the first sentence of every paragraph. The answer to these questions are qualified maybes. Breakable devices are naturally subject to any stresses that a disaster might impose. The fruits of the gadgeteer advantage are often jury-rigged hodgepodges of parts and thus far more vulnerable to damage or failure. In the case of the titular Y2K bug, the GM must determine just how likely it is that a particular device or gadget will contain off-the-shelf microprocessors. Whether a specific device actually fails, though, is ultimately up to the GM, who should base his ruling not only on these guidelines, but also on the dramatic considerations and needs of the current plot. So remember, folks, for the majority of time that this book has existed, it was only 3 months that this book would have existed as a work of people role-playing the speculative possibilities of what might happen in the future. This is, for the majority of its, 24 years of existence. That was the easier way to do the math. It's been a book about playing the recent past, right? It's like GURPS Dealey Plaza. If it was like if you made a book called GURPS Dealey Plaza for the first edition of GURPS in like 1986, right? Or GURPS Vietnam. It's about playing 25 years ago. You could play speculative, like near future past, right? Where the Y2K bug really did happen. But part of this whole thing with the meta RPG and part of this whole concept that I have with the only thing that makes any sense to engage with these role-playing game materials at this point in human history is that, is understanding as the methodology whereby we can come to understand if virtual reality comes and artificial intelligence doesn't decide to do away with us, but decides to converse with us or decides to give us what we want, then this is learning how to go to other places in our mind and learning how to make change in accordance with our will, and learning how to deal with being abstracted to new planes of existence or new realities, is the training, the mental training, the psychonaut mental training of living in that future. Even though it might entail confronting strange new realities of the future, means where would you be able to train for that? Would you train in places where you can conceive of realities that existed in the past? The knowable, the conceivable, the constructible. You start where you can start. If I'm making any sense at all, which I might not be at all. GURPS IOU, welcome to Illuminati University. Tongue-in-cheek take on this. What does the O stand for? Do you want to make more money? Sure you do. You may not know it, but there are great opportunities in the field of abusive Machiavellian behavior and tyrannical world domination. How better to begin ruling your world than by taking classes where the best got their start? Good old IOU. And if your home planet doesn't have cheap interdimensional travel, buy this book and save on substantial paperwork processing fees. What was I just saying? GURPS Illuminati University contains everything you're cleared to know about the multiverse's premier learning facility from Ivan Teller's Gonna Shit Twice. Premier learning facility from making a character to enrolling in classes, plus terrifying new additions to your GURPS game, from the crock pot of the gods to the enigmatic alien device button pushing table. IOU, where unusual background isn't just an advantage, it's a way of life. 1995, a very good year for me. Power year for me. What is this? Look at this. Let's set away the cards. Pyramid, the best in gaming. Pyramid brings you the best role-playing games, the most exciting adventures, the hottest computer games, and the industry's most up-to-date gaming news. This big, colorful magazine includes articles. I remember, it's their gaming magazine. I could subscribe to them for how many a year? Subscriptions are $23.70 per year. No, look at that number. That's a specific number. Or $45 for 2 years. $6 extra per year to Canada and Mexico, $18 extra per year overseas. You may pay by credit card, money order, or check. U.S. dollars on a U.S. bank, please. Texas residents only. Please add 8% sales tax. And do you guys remember Steve Jackson being part of that whole 9/11 on the cards? It was the Illuminati card game, I think. Welcome. Building characters, colleges and departments, university organizations, people, places, things, the IOU campaign, Beyond Mundane, IOU Adventures, Glossary, Bibliography, Index, School of Weird and Unusual, College of Obscure and Unhealthy, College of Temporal Happenstance, School of Conservative Arts, School of Performing and Creative Arts, College of Metaphysics, College of Communications, College of Social Anti-Sciences, College of Zen Surrealism. Let's go there. Yes, you have it. You have to. College of Zen Surrealism. Omens for the poor. If we knew what this was, we'd tell you. Maybe. But it seems to get money from somewhere. Since its formation, no, I'm not going to do it. CZS has provided a home for those departments that are so totally divorced from reality that they have trouble supporting themselves, even in a university environment where circular justifications for subjects are the norm. A well-kept secret IOU is the fact that the output of some of the departments here actually have practical applications. It is especially important to keep the professors in CZS from discovering this, lest they suffer the centipede's dilemma, thinking too hard about which leg moves first and kneeling over in nervous fits. Other CZS departments, CZS Department of Inapplicable Mathematics. Since sufficiently advanced mathematics is indistinguishable from surrealism, the pure math people have ended up here. Applied mathematics lives in WUSA. In fact, advanced theoretical math is so disconnected from reality that surrealism is concrete in comparison. Researchers here spend their time looking for ways to invent the sphere, square the circle, and transform eigenvectors. They also have the only graduate students on campus who can make a decent pot of coffee. The primary requirement for students and faculty in this department is mathematical ability and high IQ. Lightning calculator is useless here. These people don't actually work with numbers. The only skills taught are various specializations of mathematics that have no conceivable use, at least until someone discovers hyperdrive and needs the math for astrogation in 13.79 dimensional non Euclidean spaces. There's no market for graduates of this department whatsoever, except for a few who become university mathematics professors. I love it. Typical courses: IM 403, topological characteristics of chaotic vortices and fractal spaces. This is awesome. IM 486, applications of invaluable decomposition to Harding's n-dimensional hyperplane folding problems. IM 612, applications of chaos theory to art, profit from higher math. IM 775, the mathematics of null dimensional non-spaces. I love this shit. This is awesome. And then from the awesome to the merely inane, we have 2 Dungeons and Dragons 4 ebooks that I got for a song from Noble Knight Games: Primal Power and Martial Power 2. The fact that they had for, I forget, but Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition had something like the world's record for like player's manuals. It had like 9. I don't know. Anyway, I've been with you for an hour and a half. I know I got the main part of, just like the theory said. Not like it's not a theory. I don't think it's a theory. Like the technique holds. The first sentence of the paragraph has the main point. It doesn't have all the details. It doesn't have the nuance. It doesn't have all the mechanics and the exceptions to the rule. But it has the name of the rule, the main point of the rule. It has the main point of the lay of the land. It has the name of the country. It has, well, just the fact that like they subdivided genocide in regards to my question about for you. Well, let me just like finish my main point about that. So remember, folks, the technique for absorbing the RPG materials quickly is just very simply, it is a technique that is the front end technique of a basic study methodology. And the only thing that I'm doing is I'm not coming back and telling you that you go back and read the whole book, from start to finish again. And what it is you get your book, you read the table of contents, and then you read the first sentence of every paragraph. And the whole point of this technique is this is a technique that you can use so that you can get and see and read the main part of a book, so that you can touch upon every part of a book and basically know it, knowing that you didn't read it for sure, but you really you familiarized yourself with the lay of the land as best you could without reading it in its entirety. You read the first sentence of every paragraph, you touched upon every paragraph on every page of the book, and therefore you touched down on every island in the sea on the book. And therefore you'll have a real great idea of what the book is. You'll have lingered on every page. You'll have seen every illustration. You won't have read the whole thing from cover to cover. But if you ever do, you'll breeze through it like a charm, and it will all slot in. Because when you read something or you write something, you make another copy in your brain. And the theory is when you read the table of contents and then you go back and you read the first sentence of every paragraph, you're setting up that mental outline in your head, so that when you then go and read all the material in detail, it's just going to slot in there. And because you have a forecasting of the outline of where future more complex stuff fits in, you have an understanding of how the things work and structured. This new information that you see won't be so confusing, because what ends up happening is that if you don't use this technique and you just read things cold, just start out first page of page, top of page 1 and go down, you're seeing new concepts, you're seeing new ideas, and you're getting thrown for a loop. You're wrestling with concepts and ideas, and you're struggling through, and you're being introduced to new ideas, but you don't really kind of know where they fit or land in the thing. You don't, and so you're working in your own gray matter of trying to wonder where it goes. And this technique is supposed to solve that. Like I said, that's where it works. As the study methodology, we're just using that, we're breaking it out from just the pure study methodology, though you can obviously go back and read the book entirely and then benefit from the study. We're just using that front end of it just so we can get our hands on a book, our hands on a material, and burn through a book that we want to see ourselves experience and know before we just put it on a shelf and have it sit on a shelf for 10, 15, 20 years without ever having seen it. Okay? So that's my video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I made some sense. And I wanted to make sure that I know I diverted and did the King Cobra JFS, and I definitely want to do some more and go all over the place, but I didn't want to go all over the place and then go all over the place again. I wanted to make sure that we are touching base and coming back and maintaining some sort of focus. From 2003 on the 20-year nostalgia loop. Remember, folks, in this 20-year nostalgia loop, just 3 years after they came out with third edition, they came out with 3.5. Nearly 20 years to the day, to the 20-year nostalgia loop, the first version of Pathfinder came out. That's on the 20-year nostalgia loop to 3.0. Of course, being born into the world saying, we're not going to be like WotC, and we're not going to do like Wizards of the Coast does. But oh wait, actually no, I'm getting my years wrong because it started in the first edition of Pathfinder came out in 2009, which it was 2009, which was on the 20-year nostalgia loop to the second edition of Dungeons and Dragons. Sorry, that was it. It was the second 20-year nostalgia loop to the second edition of Dungeons and Dragons. Just like fourth edition was on the 20 nostalgia loop to the second edition of Dungeons and Dragons, and just like that, didn't do as good as the thing that was on the nostalgia loop to the first edition of Dungeons and Dragons. Watch your rhythm. But just like the nostalgia loop holds, 3 years after third edition, Wizards of the Coast did their first, hey, remember how we're not fuckers like TSR? We actually are, because look at us. You just bought all these books in 2000, but here it is 2003, and we're telling you it's 3.5 time. But Pathfinder did their second edition, which was really their first edition, in 2019, which was right on the 20-year nostalgia loop to third edition. And just in 2023, just on the 20-year nostalgia loop to 3.5, they're doing exactly what Wizards of the Coast did, and they're doing a 2.5 with their remaster project. And we get the Three of Wands. Man and woman have a little baby. 1, 2, 3, 3, 3. 3 is the magic number. We touched on 3 before. The Three of Wands. 3. The Wands, the suit of primal, male. Well, depending on your point of view. Fire, generative, life force energy, pulsing across the universe. The triangle is the strongest shape. That's why we see it in so much architecture. Pyramids and teepees and joists. So the energy holds together here in balance. So we see these patterns repeat, and we can see them. Oh shoot, I gotta go. But we see these patterns hold and repeat for a natural, causative reason. See the patterns, follow the patterns, enjoy the patterns. They exist for a reason.